Well then, Ken. Hello, you
All right.
are. We're joined by Kent. How are you doing, Kent?
How's it going, Russell? How you doing?
All right. What's been happening since we last spoke?
I think today, Russell, we're going to do a heavyweight video.
Yeah, is that what you want to do? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do a heavyweight video. I suppose we're going to do a heavyweight video and talk about anything but AJ and anything about Tyson Fury and Usyk. Just a heavyweight video apart from all that nonsense that's going on in the background.
Yeah. 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 Go on then. What do you think about this Usyk Fury situation at the moment? Because no, it seems to me happening, does it?
It's 6 weeks away. Really, it seems a year away. It seems, it's so close but so far away. What's going on in the background, we've got you know rematch clauses being discussed. We've got split purse, upside broadcaster. It doesn't really look like it's going to happen, does it?
No, no. Well, maybe Furies might just be looking for an edge. Have you ever thought about that? I mean, you never know. They always it goes like this, and then they turn it on its head, don't they, and laugh at everybody. So they could just be looking for an edge and to play everybody, couldn't they?
I think is it a psychological edge or is it a financial edge?
Well, he's
Which one
already
is it?
got the financial edge, hasn't he? He's already got the financial edge. So now he might just be looking for an edge psychologically. Yeah, probably.
So we've been seeing this the last few years with really big stars,
Yeah,
especially fighters that generate a lot of money, that generate a big crowd at the gate, and they always kind of dictate everything right up until the last minute. And I remember Joe Gallagher was saying that when they were when he was training Callum Smith at the time, and they got that big fight against Calano, and they basically kept them till 4 weeks before the fight until they actually told them that they had a fight before anything was announced. So when you're sitting like that there, you're yes, you are going to be in camp training, but you don't have that edge where you're possibly thinking, well, I'll keep fit here, I'll train, but in case it comes up, but it might not come up. And when you're sitting waiting like that, you just aren't 100% focused. You aren't going to commit the same with the sparring, with the training, and everything else. And I think that's maybe a ploy that Tyson's using just to try and get the upper hand. And any possible advantage getting into this fight is massive because I think Usyk's such a good fighter technically. Uh, he's been really active. He's been more active than Tyson over the last 5 years than he has. And you look at Tyson, Tyson's not as good an athlete as
yeah,
Usyk, and there's a lot of wear and tear there. So any advantage possible is going to help him get into this fight.
yeah. What do you see happening with Usyk if this fight doesn't happen? I mean, where does he go?
I think the whole thing with Daniel Dubois, with the Kevin Lorena fight, getting dropped 3 times. You know, did he have a stability issue? Well, he did have a stability issue. He got caught in the top of the head, and that was a stability issue. It wasn't, the whole thing about, yeah, his knee. He's had to get surgery on his knee, his ACL, MCL, whatever they're talking about. For me, that's just going to be used now as a ploy to keep him sitting waiting for a cash out because I think Frank Warren's not stupid. I think he knows Donald Dubois' level. I think everybody knows Dubois' level now. He's went to Shane McGuigan, and to be honest with you, there's absolutely no improvement whatsoever on him. I think Frank Warren knows that. I think Warren knows that he can only match him against certain types of opposition. He stepped up against Joyce. He was beat. Yes, it was a good fight. So I think he's just sitting it out. I'm waiting to see how Usyk and Fury pans out, because he is the number one. He's got that WBA inferior belt, and I think he's just waiting now for a big fight against Usyk.
You reckon? Yeah.
Well, it makes sense, because it means that if that happens, surely there's going to be some sort of relationship or partnership now with Frank Warren. So if that did happen, you know the way these contracts work. There could be upside, there could be an option, there could be 3-fight option, there could be a 2-fight option, there could be a rematch clause. So even if that's the case, that means Frank Warren and Queensberry will be controlling the whole heavyweight division. And even if Fury and Usyk don't fight each other, he's still got control of the heavyweight division, and it just keeps him away from DAZN and Matchroom.
Yeah. What happened to Ruiz Wilder fight, Ken?
Well, there's this whole thing, with PBC. How's PBC doing financially in America? Wilder was out in Saudi a couple of weeks back with Zhilei Finkel. What were they out there for? I'm surely they weren't out to watch Tommy Fury against Jake Paul. Zhilei Finkel said that they were out discussing something, and something would be announced, in the forthcoming days afterwards, but that hasn't materialized. So I think everyone's out chasing Saudi money, and they want Saudi money, and I don't think it's financially viable. But the whole thing in America is that fighters want paid instantly, but I think Wilder put a thing out after his last fight against Helenius that he wanted paid on the night, and he wanted paid on that, within the fight week. But if it's a pay-per-view fight, surely, and you've got upside in your deal, it's going to take a couple of weeks before all the figures come through, and before you can find out what percentage you actually take on the upside. So I don't know if Wilder actually understands the business end of being a pay-per-view fighter and being on the upside. So it's interesting to see how PBC is going to pan out. What was the money going to be? But for Deontay Wilder and Luis Ortiz, are they going to go to DAZN in America? It just seems to be a bit of a shambles, to be honest with you.
Yeah. It's it's all a bit bizarre. I mean, Luis Ortiz hasn't fought for since he fought Ruiz, has he? About 6 months ago, over 6 months ago.
Well, he does that, he's not an active fighter. He just wants to sit and get, for a while, for a few years there, he was getting, really easy fights, 1 or 2 fights a year. I don't think he's at that age where he can actually do multiple camps a year. They say he's 43, but I think he looks a lot older than 43. Like, so I think he's just sitting back, waiting for a big fight. I think the whole PBC thing is PBC, Al Heyman doesn't like guys that are under that banner going and fighting in other promotions. So I think they're just waiting and panning out. You've got the Andy Ruiz loss. You had a win against Charles Martin. You had Alexander Flores, a 1-round walkover, and he had that, second knockout loss to Wilder and a Christian Hammer win. So there's not much depth, and probably his last, what is it, 5 wins. They're really C and D level guys. So I just think he's sitting around waiting for a paycheck.
What do you think to Joshua fight with Franklin?
I think nobody cares about it. I don't really think anybody cares. I don't think it's a fight that appeals to anyone. I don't think it's a fight that's going to appeal to the casual boxing fans, because they don't know who Franklin is. Two, 3 fights ago, Franklin, was going the distance with Pavel Sar. So it's not exactly going to be a great fight. I thought Franklin actually beat Dillian Whyte, but Dillian Whyte's performance that night was absolutely dire. I think anybody that could punch would have knocked Dillian Whyte out on that night. He's not noted as Franklin's not noted as a puncher. He's only 14 KOs from 21, but he hasn't fought he hasn't knocked anybody out really at world level. He had a split decision win against Jerry Forrest. He went 10 rounds with Pavel Sar. He's been inactive for the last couple of years with management problems. But I think the losing performance against Dillian Whyte got him in there, because I think everybody and their dog knew that he beat Dillian Whyte.
What do you see happening with Jermaine Franklin and Joshua? Do you see Joshua winning?
To be honest with you, Russell, I don't actually know. I don't know how AJ is emotionally. Has he been emotionally since Tyson Fury's come back? I've spoke about this before. I think he was everyone's favorite. He was given an Olympic title. It was gifted on his lap. He was gifted a world title. In probably one of the worst world title fights that I've ever seen in my life. It was absolutely atrocious against Charles Martin. He was gifted that. He went life and death with a really old Vladimir that Tyson beat up a few years before. He struggled with the likes of Povetkin, Takam, and was knocked out by a 20-stone Andy Ruiz with 6 weeks' notice. So I don't know where he's at. He's changed camp multiple times. It's all right beating the likes of Charles Martin, Dominic Breazeau, and Eric Molina. Somebody like Joseph Parker, he didn't throw a punch in that fight. But I really don't know what he's like psychologically. He's changed camps multiple times. He's brought multiple coaches in, and none of that seems to have helped him. So why is getting a new coach now? How's that gonna help? Was there distractions before? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what Anthony Joshua is like emotionally at the minute. I think, does he actually want to box? Is it financial? Well, obviously it is, because he's making millions a fight. But coming from stadium shows and Wembley and selling out arenas and football stadiums and having massive pay-per-view numbers, to now nobody's really talking about him, fighting. There's no hype to it anymore. So I don't know. I just don't know what he's got left physically, mentally, and emotionally.
Oh, Big Meech.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's shot to death, Big Meech, in my opinion. Shot to pieces.
I think anybody that can bring him into the second half of a fight has a chance. I think he carries too much muscle. I think he gets oxygen that really quickly. I think he doesn't like getting hit. I think he panics when he gets hit. And I think if you can just see out, he's a fast twitch athlete. You just need to look at him to see he is a pure fast twitch athlete.
Yeah,
and you can only be fast twitch athlete for 3 rounds. That's 9 minutes. Then as power starts to decrease, oxygen, lactic acid starts building up. He gets cumbersome. His feet get really heavy. So I think anybody that can get him into a second half of a fight has a real chance against him. But Franklin isn't a puncher. He hit Dillian White with everything, and he didn't hurt Dillian White. And Dillian White's been knocked out, by Povetkin and AJ, and he's been dropped. So if Franklin's not hurting Dillian White, he's not. Is he gonna drop or hurt Anthony Joshua?
No, he's like a gatekeeper type, isn't he, Franklin, isn't he?
Well, he's kind of fell into that because he hadn't fought in a few years. He's a decent fighter. He's a good skill set. He's a clever fighter. He's a clever heavyweight. He's not the biggest puncher, but he can move. He knows his way around the ring. He seems to have a decent defense. I don't know if he has, or does Anthony Joshua even have a chin to withstand punishment from anybody?
Well,
we'll find out. We don't know. We don't know. There's so many variables that we don't know what AJ has anymore.
What's happening with Dereck Chisora, Kent?
Dereck Chisora, well, where does he go from here? I think even
13 losses, hasn't he?
I think even now that Eddie knows that it's got to that point in his career now that
the game's up in it now.
The story's over. It's gone. That fairy tale is over. Like he's 13 losses. The last fight against Kubrat Pulev, his last win was a life and death split decision. He had those 2 losses back to back. That, like when Joseph Parker's beating you, it's time to, that says it all. I don't know how he got another pay-per-view, the Zone show headline after losing twice to Joseph Parker. I don't rate Joseph Parker in any way, shape, or form. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a Takam fight, but I can't see any broadcaster wanting to sell that as a standalone. Takam, he beat Tony Yoka last week, but who wants to see that as a headliner? They have this thing now where people say, yeah, it's a fun fight, but Takam's 42, so he is. I don't really want to see Dereck Chisora and the likes of Takam because there's nowhere for them after to go. It's not. You can't sell it as a world title eliminator. You can't sell it as somebody that's going to go on and win or challenge for a world title.
No, you can't, can you? You can't. What do you see happening with Joyce, Kent?
Well, he's got that fight against Zhang Zhilei, which I think is a really good fight. I think it's a brilliant fight. I think it's 2 guys who are, one's a top 15 heavyweight and one's a top 10 heavyweight. You can't really argue with that. So you can't. It's a good fight. It's going to be exciting. I thought, in his last fight there, I thought he looked really good. He's exciting. He's already stopped the likes of Takam. He's already beat Daniel Dubois, Joyce. He's a really good. He fought Ian Lewison in his first fight. So he's been fighting really good opposition from he turned pro. He's beat Stavern. Well, Stavern's had, I think Stavern's lost now 6 in a row. He's beat Jennings. He's beat Dubois. He's beat Takam, Hammer. He destroyed Joseph Parker. I think he's just going to sit around and wait for the whole. I think everyone just has to sit around and wait until Fury and Usyk are done, and whenever they're done, they're going to be another 6 months to a year before they fight. So I suppose they have to keep busy and fight. You know, if you're getting top 15 opposition for good money, I suppose it's basically the equivalent of winning a strap of a world title. It probably works out. They're going to get the same amount of money for those fights on the purse split than now just fighting those top 15 opposition. So financially, it probably works out the same.
What is happening with Tony Yoka? Do you think that's it for him now?
Where can he go? You know, he's been beat by a 42-year-old in Takam. You know, what you know, he won 2 rounds. I scored it. I think I give Yoka 2 rounds.
Yeah.
I can't see where is he gonna high now? Can he come back in the world title contention? It's done. He looks like somebody that's bored with boxing. He looks like somebody that's got this Olympic entitlement that he just turns up and wins. I think the corner, I think his camp, I think his team were a shambles. I think Hunter's probably one of the most overrated coaches in boxing. Like they were telling him he was up in points, and there's no way he was up in points. You know, it just seems like he's bored with boxing and he's so lazy to even train or spar, or he's one of these guys that seems to, you know, dictate high trains and high spars. That's no way to be a professional boxer, to be honest.
Yeah, what has Virgil Hunter done by anybody other than Ward?
Nothing. You know, Andre Ward probably could have trained himself. You know, Andre Ward had God-given talent. You know, he's a special fighter. I think anybody could have trained Andre Ward to get to that level, and that level as an amateur and a professional. I don't think it's anything that Hunter's done for him. I think he's overrated as a coach. You know, you look at it, Amir Khan. You know, I think Amir Khan regressed under Hunter. To be honest with you, I know he was at the wild card with Freddie Roach, but he was more exciting. He had better wins on his resume with Freddie Roach than he did under Hunter.
Yeah. What about Wilder? Where's he in mix now then?
I think Wilder's just parking himself up and waiting for a big opportunity to come along to make a lot of money. I think you look at, you know, the heavyweight mix. You know, you look at the heavyweight on BoxRec. You know, not that I go off BoxRec for ratings, but I just looked today there and I noticed that Daniel Dubois was the youngest out of the top 10 in the world. So at heavyweight, so it's an old division. It is a really old division. You know, you've got Tyson Fury that's 34, Usyk is 36, AJ's 32, 33, Andy Ruiz, you know, 33, Joyce 36, and you've got Deontay Wilder who's 37. So, you know, Dillian White, not that 35, Luis Ortiz in his 40s, Joseph Parker, Dubois. So Dubois is 25. So you look at that division and you see it's an aging division, it's an old division. And I think you look at Wilder, I think he's just looking for the biggest possible coin to come along. He's just waiting for the coin. He's just waiting for a big opportunity. I think personally, I think he's got such an ego. He's such an egomaniac. I think he's waiting for a 4th fight with Tyson Fury.
Yeah, Martin McCauley, he's still in his 20s though, isn't he?
McCauley's 29.
Yeah.
So he is. It's interesting that Sky at the minute, you know, Sky seem to have a good, you know, stable of heavyweights. You know, they've got they've got, with the exception of Joseph Parker, that is, they've got Martin Bacoli, they've got Hughie coming back, so they've got a decent stable of top 15 heavyweights.
Hughie putting division on notice.
I would like to see Hughie come back and finish a camp. You know, I think Hughie needs to come back and, you know, get a good camp behind him, get good sparring behind him, then come back with someone that he's going to get a good win against, then get out pretty quick. You know, everyone talks about ring rust in any division. It's not good for any fighter. You just want to get Hughie back, and he needs to get back and get a win under his belt and then go for a big fight. You know, maybe somebody coming back like a Kevin Johnson, you know, Kamel Sakalowski, Jack Massey, Jonathan Dubois, somebody like that there. Possibly somebody like KBL, you know, for European title. Then you've got possibly Bacoli, Takam, or Parker fight, you know, after that. I think that would be a good route to go for Hughie coming back.
What about Lucas Big Daddy Brown and Gerald Miller? What do you think of
Well,
that?
it's kind of like, you know, they talk about these as crop saying like it was a fun fight, and it was basically a freak show boxing. You know, that's what it was like. It was like, you know, Jermell Miller was 333 pounds. You know, he was over 23 stone for that fight. Lucas Brown was close to 270 pounds for the fight. Crazy. It was just a random fight.
Well,
in the middle of
24 stone is 336.
So he was just under. He was 3 pound under 24 stone.
Yeah, but when he got bigger, it'd have been that because it'd been watering up, wouldn't he?
Yeah, and you look at Miller and you think he's a small heavyweight, but he's actually 6'4". He's a big lump, but because he's so big, he's so carries so much mass, it actually makes him look smaller.
Yeah.
You know, Lucas Brown, to be honest with you, you know what do he beat Junior Fa? That says it all for Joseph Parker. You know, him and Joseph Parker had a hug fest 2 years ago, and probably one of the worst fights I've ever seen. And Big Daddy Lucas Brown absolutely iced him. So, you know, he was knocked out, you know, by a rugby player and Paul Gallen, which was horrendous. You know, for a guy that went to Russia and beat Shagayev for the WBA title at the time and had some good fights, you know, before and after that, they get knocked out by Paul Gallen, an ex-rugby player. It's pretty poor, like, but it was just and see, the scary thing about it is the two of them were actually ranked in the top 15 WBA.
Yeah, yeah, it's yeah, do you see Miller winning a title?
I think Miller is just going to go along and he's going to have these random fights in random places and obscure athletic commissions, and that's how he's going to get through. He's just waiting something out. You know, he's just waiting for that big opportunity. I always said that Eddie should just bury the hatchet with him and just make him and AJ a fight. I think that would probably sell better than the Franklin fight. I think it has more of a backstory. That, you know, there is a previous between the two of them. I think it would probably sell. I think Jermell Miller sells a fight well because of his personality. I would actually like to see somebody like. I actually said it would be good for even Sky. You know, be even like good for somebody like a Martin Bacoli or even Fraser Clark. They get a fight with Jermell Miller, somebody of that level for the two of them. You know, they give them that bit of exposure and moving forward.
Yeah, what about Hrgovic? Where's his role in all this now?
Who wants to watch him? Why would you want to watch Philip Hrgovic?
Well, I'm just
He look
asking what his role is in it now, after his recent performance over that Zhang.
who wants to watch him? Why you wouldn't want to watch him? You know, he doesn't bring anything to the table. You know, there it goes there. You know, Joyce and Zhang have got a fight coming up in the next few weeks, and there's Hrgovic got the win, but there's Zhang's got a really good fight and is probably getting paid more for that fight than Hrgovic has had in any of his fights go forward. So it kind of says it all and where he is. Personally, I never rated him. I didn't see High was the boogeyman of the division in any way. I always seen him. His style is quite boring. He was in between styles. He looks like another one of these fighters that, like, he reminds me of Yoka. He reminds me of Tony Yoka, a boxer that's been fighting a long time, had a long amateur career, and is just absolutely bored, and it's just turned up to get paid because there's nothing else, doesn't know anything else, but he's just completely bored with boxing. That's what I get of Hrgovic.
I've noticed that Frank Sanchez, he seems to have slipped up rankings, doesn't he? Kent 21-0, 14 early bath.
He's another one of these PBC fighters. You know, he's a Cuban fighter, but he's not a puncher. He's not an exciting boxer. You know, he had that win. He had that win against F.A. Jagba, and it was just a boxing lesson. You know, it was a good performance from him, who was another PBC fighter. But it's just a fight that he's just a fighter that he doesn't knock anybody out. He doesn't sell tickets, and he's not going to sell pay-per-view. So why would a broadcaster really want to invest a lot in him?
Oh yeah, so he's a bit like Luis Ortiz, really. Anyway, he was coming through, innit, doing well.
But Ortiz had more. You know, Ortiz was knocking people out. You know, Sanchez isn't. Sanchez is just a box. He's a slick boxer. He's a good boxer. He's great skills, but he's not exciting. He's not entertaining. I think at least Ortiz, you know, he was a big southpaw. You know, very very heavy handed. Sanchez isn't heavy handed. Like Sanchez landed. You know, if he would have went out there and stopped, you know, if he would have went out there and actually knocked out like Jagba, that would have been a real statement. But the fact that it went to points, you know, he went to points with Christian Hammer. You know, Joyce smashed him up. You know, so it says a lot where he is going forward. I think they're just all sitting waiting out for a big payday that they get flogged.
Yeah, yeah. All right then. Kent, you want to go on to part 2, mate?
Yeah.
Porky's Corner is proud to be sponsored by Spartan Site Solutions. They are specialists in civil engineering and demolition contracts for the construction industry. Interested parties should visit their website or contact Porky's Corner for a referral at porkycorner@mail.com.